Hello, everybody. I'm here today with Armanda Tyes. She is a public school educator. She's been a classroom teacher and a title teacher in her different roles as an educator. Armanda, how are you today?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Doing well.
So let's get right into it. So why don't you tell us where you grew up, what city and state you grew up in?
I grew up here in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and
Right here.
what was the neighborhood where you grew up? What was the neighborhood like?
It was a mix of kids. There were African American students. I mean, not students, but kids. There were we had some Caucasian kids in our area. We had some Hispanics. So we just had a nice melting pot right there in our neighborhood, and
Right.
everyone kind of took care of each other.
Oh, okay. So do you think that in your teaching profession, like growing up in a neighborhood like that, do you think that benefited you as an educator maybe a little bit?
Yes, I really believe that it did. Like a lot of times when I was dealing with maybe one of my more difficult students that maybe came from a neighborhood like mine, I would use that to my benefit. I would say to them, listen, I came from the same place you did, and you can do whatever you want to do. And so I would use that a lot of times. And when I would tell them, I grew up right down the street from Wilson or wherever it was, they'd be shocked a lot of times. But I really do feel like that was beneficial.
Right. So let's talk about your parents. Did you grow up with both parents, single parent home? How many siblings did you have in the home with you?
In there with me.
Or in your family, how many
before.
siblings?
We had 16. There were 16 of us.
Okay.
We had some older ones from 2 marriages, but there were some older ones that did not live there with us. But I had a brother that lived there with me, and then us 3 girls were there. We were the younger bunch of that.
Okay. So a total of 15 with all together?
Including me, 16.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing. So what kind of work did your parents do?
My father worked in a foundry. He worked at National Forge. He worked in a factory for years. Yeah. My mom was a stay-home mom.
Okay.
She stayed home with us.
Right. Okay.
Took care of us.
So what are some things that your parents stressed in your home that you remember?
Church. Church. Respect. We had to respect all of our elders. Discipline was a big thing in our home. So I would say mostly church, and having a good work ethic, I would say would be those things that I thought that they stressed.
Mm-hmm. Do you, you're a mother yourself, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And how many children do you have?
I have 3.
Okay. So do you feel like you've used any of the things that you got from your parents in your own upbringing, bringing your own kids up?
Yes. I try to stress to them that, having a good work ethic is important. Having a faith in God is important. A lot of people out here don't have any hope, but we can hope in God and we can trust in God, and that gets me far.
Right.
That gets me farther along than me not having Him in my life. And so I try to stress that to my kids, when in doubt, pray. Talk to God for yourself. I can talk to Him for you, but you need to talk to God for yourself. So, yes, I really believe that I use a lot of things that my parents, showed us in my home.
Mm-hmm.
I did some of the same things.
So those things, even though that was a couple years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, it still works today. Like some of that stuff, that those same principles and things still work today.
Still work today.
Yeah.
They still work today.
So let's talk about your career. So you're an educator, and how long have you been in the educational field?
I've probably been actually teaching for about 27 years, because before I came to the district, I taught at a private school for like a year or 2,
Okay.
and then I worked at a preschool for like 3 or 4 years, and then I went into the school district.
Okay.
Yes.
So what are some of the positions that you've held during your long 27-year career?
Well, I was a preschool teacher.
Right.
I taught 1st grade. I taught 5th grade. I taught 6th grade. I taught 7th grade. I taught 8th grade. I was a title teacher. So I've been.
You've had a mixture of a lot of different
yes,
things.
Early education, and then through like middle school is where I pretty much was at.
Okay. Do you have a preference for what you'd like? Is it elementary, middle, high? I mean, is there a preference for you?
I like the latter years in the elementary, fourth, fifth, and I like the middle school more.
Is there a reason why, or?
I just think that with the younger kids, you really have to have that patience. You have to have that patience because they're more needy. They need more from you. You know, wherein those kids that are in fourth and fifth grade, they could be a little bit more independent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that's the reason why I think I like it more. I didn't mind having the first and second grade,
ones,
the
right.
younger ones, but they're just really, really needy. And if you don't have, you really have to have patience. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be working
In the younger
with
grades.
the younger grades. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Right. So, why did you choose to go into education? Like initially, what made you go that route?
There's just so many people. When I first went into education, I wanted to be a reading teacher. There's just so many people, like you'd be surprised how many people can't read, or they can read the words and they don't understand what they read.
Right.
You know, and I just wanted to be able to make a difference. I wanted to be able to make a change, you know, in people's lives. I wanted to be able to make a difference. I wanted to be able to have an impact, especially on the African American culture. I wanted to be able to be that example for some of our kids because some of them don't feel like they don't have any hope.
Right.
You know, they don't feel like they can do anything else. You know, so I wanted to be that for them.
Right. So, what are some things that you enjoy as an educator? Like during your time as in a classroom teacher or title teacher, what do you enjoy about it?
I love seeing the student actually get it. Like when that light bulb comes on, it does something for me. You know, like I can't believe you actually got it.
Right,
You know,
right.
and you could see like the joy in their eyes. You can see the joy in their eyes. It's like, yeah, I get it. You know, I understand this. You know,
Right.
I think that's like the biggest thing for me is seeing it, and then even having them come back to you and say thank you, or if it wasn't for you, you know, that really does something for me.
Right. So, on the other side of that, you know, we know education can be challenging. Like, you know, it's has some great joys, but there are some days when it challenges you. So what are some of the challenges that you faced or people are going to face if they go into education?
That student that you can't get through to. That's for me like a big challenge, and how like trying to figure out how can I get to this child, like how can I make them understand that their education is important, and even like my struggling student, like how can I make this more clear for this student. That's my biggest challenge is how can I break this down even more so that they can understand what it is I'm trying to get across to them.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times you go home with that,
Right.
thinking about, you know, what can I do different tomorrow? And with those students that are more difficult behaviorally, you know, you go home thinking, what can I do to make this child not be so angry or, you know, or so depressed or, you know, people think that at 3:10 we leave our jobs and that's where it stays at, it's there. But a lot of educators, if you care, if you're one of those that care, you take it home with you. You lose sleep about it. You know,
Right.
so that would be what I would say would be the most challenging is trying to find something to reach those kids that are struggling, whether it be academically or whether it be behaviorally.
So you're talking about like self-reflection. So you go home at night and you actually reflect on like what happened today and how can I make it better for tomorrow.
Yes.
Do you think is that something that you would encourage all educators to do? Like,
Yes.
okay, why is that?
Because in order to be a good teacher, you have to have that relationship with that child. And if you can't get in, you can't teach them anything. They're going to block you right out. They won't hear anything you're saying that whole year, and then that defeats the purpose.
Right.
You've done everything that you've done in vain. And I just don't want to be one of those people.
Right.
You know, so that would be something that I would say. You definitely have to make sure that you have a relationship with these kids. Try to develop a rapport with them.
Right. So how did you, in your classroom, we know that you kind of led into the next question about relationships, which is very big. How do you go about connecting with your students or showing them that you care?
A lot of times I'll try to see if I've had some of their past family members. If maybe I know a parent. If they're in sports, I ran track and I played volleyball. Even basketball. I didn't play basketball, but I liked basketball, and even some of it I don't understand.
Right.
But like I'd show up at some of their games. I'd be like their number one fan, shouting out their name and screaming their name and hollering their name, and they remember that. You know, Mrs. Tyes sitting up there, and and a lot of times we'll make them do better, or whatever, just trying to impress you as their teacher.
Right.
So things like that, just trying to develop some kind of relationship with them, because then they'll open up to you even if there's something that's going on with them inside that maybe somebody else couldn't reach. Sometimes they'll open up to you and they'll tell you things, they'll share things with you, so then now they can learn.
Right.
Instead of holding those things inside.
Right. So do you have any advice for somebody's right now in college, like I'm going to be a teacher, or in high school thinking I'm going to go to college to be a teacher? What advice do you have for them that are coming up and want to do that?
I would say you have to love kids. You have to love kids, and you have to, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, Russian, whatever they are, you have to love kids, and you have to see that kid as just being a kid. My former principal used to say to us, every day you have to come back here and you have to be able to forgive that child, because they're a child. You got to look at it as if we're talking about a 12-year-old. You're the adult. They're thinking like a 12-year-old, and so you have to be able to put it, anything that happened that day before, you got to be able to put that behind you. You got to be able to have patience. You got to love what you're doing. I would say you have to make sure that you can get a rapport. You may not be able to get a rapport with all the students, but you do need to go in there and you need to make sure that you respect them and make sure that they're respecting you.
Right.
You have to be able to do that also. I would say if your heart ain't in it, don't do it, because you have to have a heart for this job. You have to have a heart for it. If you don't have a heart for it, if you don't care about these kids, they know. They can see right through you. I try really, really hard to be transparent with my students. They know that I care. I care about every last one, even my more difficult ones. I cared about them. I would pull them in the hall. We would have heart-to-hearts, because a lot of times you can deal with those kids one-on-one better than you can when they're in front of their friends.
Right.
So those are some of the things that I would tell them, and don't give up so easily. A lot of the younger group, they give up. They give up on the student. Don't give up on that student that easily. Try different things, and you may not be able to do it this way. You might have to try other ways. You might have to go to another teacher and get some advice from them. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know.
Right.
Those would be some of the things that I would say, that would be my advice to someone coming into education.
Right. So once again, we were here with Armanda Tyes. She is a teacher, educator. She's been a classroom teacher and a title teacher, total of 27 years, both in public education and private education. So Armanda, thank you for your time today. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.